This is me turning to say good morning to you, Robert.
Good morning to you, Priscilla. My name is Kyagulanyi.
Naroga, so it's Kyagulanyi, Naroga.
Yeah, pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much for having us once again. While you were away and from the last time we had conversations, a lot has happened on the national scene, and we are always seeing what government is doing. We are always seeing what the three arms of government are trying to do about these matters. But there's always the notion that someone else probably has an alternative solution or idea on how best to mitigate the issues that we're grappling with as Uganda. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of it, let's talk about the documentary film that you premiered in Italy that is dubbed Bobi Wine, the Ghetto President. Tell us about that.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Yeah, I was in Venice, Italy, and later at Telluride Mountains in the United States in Colorado. We were screening a documentary film initially called Bobi Wine, the Ghetto President, but when National Geographic took it over and it was reviewed by various people, it was renamed the People's President. Nevertheless, the detail of that documentary film is a tale of our journey ever since we got into active politics, but most importantly, the chronicle documentation of the horrors and atrocities that Ugandans have had to endure under General Museveni. I must mention that in the film, not even 1% of the violence and oppression is documented, because this is centered around me and the people that are around me. And you'll agree with me that we, the people that are always in the camera, face the least of the oppression. But even that list that was documented, it was horrifying to the world. I'm very glad that we had the opportunity to expose firsthand, unfiltered, unedited, the situation in Uganda. You see, General Museveni has been smart all along. He has invested a lot of time, a lot of siasa, a lot of propaganda, but most importantly, billions of taxpayers' money trying to paint a glossy and rosy picture of Uganda. Now, for the first time, we struck the mask off and we stripped him bare. So that's an achievement. At least now, it is not hearsay. It is reality. It is documented on camera.
Okay, what do you expect to achieve out of this documentary in the future of your political journey? Exposure.
Exposure. I said it in the beginning that part of our agenda was to expose the inconsistencies, the injustice, and the atrocities, to show this regime to the world for what it is, a military dictatorship, and a brutal one at that, So ours is exposure, exposure, exposure.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of the world, you have made a trip to Ukraine, and you have been having a first-hand experience in terms of what's happening in Ukraine and the dictatorship again that you speak of that is coming through from Russia. Allow me to quote your tweet. You said, "In Kyiv, Ukraine, to express solidarity with the Ukrainian people and leadership against Russia's war of aggression and occupation. If the dictators stand by each other, the Democrats should stand by each other too. It's dangerous but noble." That was your tweet last week. Give us more details into what you meant, that if the dictators are standing together, even the Democrats should stand together.
It's clear. Dictators on one side, Democrats on another side. You notice that some of the... First of all, I'll talk about the war, Russia's war in Ukraine. The war of occupation. Ukraine, like many other countries, were one time part of the Soviet Empire, and they got their independence recently, 1991. However, there's been an effort by President Putin to make sure he recolonizes all these other countries. I mean, that's the cause of the war in Ukraine today. Ukraine is insisting that they are an independent state. They want to self-determine. They want to choose whether to be part of the European Union or to be part of the Soviet Union. They are a people with a history, with a culture. And I think, like South Sudan, like Somaliland, like all these other nations that strive for self-determination, I think Ukraine deserves the right as well. And we always say that occupation in one place is a threat to independence elsewhere. At least in 2021, we wouldn't expect a country, a civilized one at that, to be invading another to occupy it. Anyway, to see that, I mean, the authoritarian rulers always stick by each other. That's why you find most African dictators actually stood by President Putin, you know, in his effort to recolonize and reoccupy Ukraine. We would not, and some of them, of course, pretended to be neutral. But like Bishop Desmond Tutu told us, you cannot be neutral in a situation of injustice. If you are pretending to be neutral when there's an injustice, then you are on the side of the strong guy. In this case, we would not, you know, pretend to be neutral. We are on the side of the oppressed people of Ukraine, and we support them to fight back and, you know, stamp down their independence. I must also mention that there's been aggressive propaganda, you know, that Russian propaganda, especially between the leaders, not the populations. I mean, when President Putin has a favor that he has done for Museveni, Museveni is going to try to justify that. I've also seen some of them claiming that, oh yeah, we have to stand by Russia because the Soviet Union was, you know, a partner in our struggle for independence. I agree with that, but it should be known that in the 60s, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. And indeed, South African freedom fighters, the armed wing of Mukonto Sizwe, when Nelson Mandela was in prison, 40% of them were trained in Ukraine. So the Ukrainians are our brothers and sisters. Today, there's Ukraine and there's Russia. What we get from Russia are the weapons, the dictator's favorite toys and tools of suppression. What we get from Ukraine is vegetable oil, food, and all that. So you can see what we get from either countries. Yeah.
Okay. We are wondering, did you have a meeting with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir?
When I was there, I met various leaders. I will tell you about some.
Please.
Some I will not tell you. Yeah. Some will remain confidential until the right time.
All right. So tell us about the leaders that you get to meet.
Those, I met quite a number of them. Some I put out there, some I did not. For example, Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Ukraine, met two former presidents. I met a few leaders in the military and other, you know, areas. I wouldn't want to put all the details out there, but what you saw is part of what I did in Ukraine.
So the bigger question is then, what sort of relationship are you trying to build with Ukraine?
A moral relationship. A moral relationship. For now, it was an initial visit. It was my first visit in Ukraine, and it was a visit in a tough time. I mean, all borders are closed. There's no flight that is going into Ukraine or out, and going into Ukraine right from the border, we were under military escort. You know, it was mainly to assess the situation and of course to stand in solidarity with them. I wasn't alone. I was with fellow leaders from Ghana, from Tanzania, and from South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for the future of good governance and democracy, what are some of those lessons that you picked out of that trip?
Freedom is worth defending at all costs. For us, we are still defending our freedom non-violently because we believe that non-violence is stronger than violence. But again, we also agree with the people of Ukraine that are picking up arms to defend themselves, because there comes a time when, you know, defending yourself morally and non-violently is not, you know, measuring up to the aggressive, violent attack. So I don't believe in violence, but again, I cannot stand in the way of the Ukrainian people that are picking up arms to defend their country. That's why all men stayed there. The women and the children were repatriated. The men stood firm and they're defending their country. And I must give it to them. They are making efforts. They are pushing back against Russia. You know, a once known world power. But now people of Ukraine are showing us that even in the face of insurmountable odds, people that love their country can defend it. They can defend their freedom. So that is an inspiration to us.
Okay.
And of course, it's supposed to warn those that are, you know, are oppressing us, that there will come when oppressed people cannot take it anymore, and we'll have to use any means necessary to maintain their freedom.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, of course, friends and supporters of the National Unity Platform and other opposition parties may commend you for the journey and the trek that you did to Ukraine. However, you do have some people having different perceptions, especially political leaders and figures within the government. For example, you do have Okello Oryem, who publicly actually came out to express his dissatisfaction of your trip, among others. And so for a country that has chosen to actually remain neutral in this conversation of Ukraine-Russia war, urged to take foreign policy lessons, does it mean that you are actually siding with Ukraine?
It does not just mean that I am siding with Ukraine. It is clear that we are siding with the freedom of Ukraine. And, you know, Mr. Okello Oryem should take some cold water and think through it. This is the same person that denied us opportunity to repatriate our brothers and sisters from China in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. These are the same people that are looking at our brothers and sisters having their organs extracted out of them in Arab countries. These are the same people that are looking with a smile on their faces while our brothers and sisters are being enslaved today in 2021. So they have no moral authority to tell us about Pan-Africanism. You know, we are oppressed people, and we stand with fellow oppressed people from across the world.
All right. Let's talk about the European resolution on Uganda's oil project. Last Thursday, we did have the European Parliament releasing an emergency resolution, and that was denouncing the consequences of the oil projects in Uganda. One of the things that they highlighted, of course, is human rights violations. They did highlight the impact of this pipeline and where exactly it's passing on environment, but also on the displacement of communities and so on and so forth. What do you make of this report? Because I know from what has been stated by your party, you sort of had influence on the European Parliament's stance on the oil project in Uganda.
Yeah, we did not only welcome it, but we procured it. We encouraged our people to demonstrate, to lobby, to use all platforms that they have to make sure that the international community does not continuously support directly or indirectly the oppression of the people of Uganda. And I'm very glad you cited it. They cited human rights violations, illegal and unfair, displacement of people. People cannot bury their dead. Today, more than 100,000 people have been displaced from their land, and most times violently. You know the corruption that goes on in the, higher offices. You know that before a road is constructed, those that are privy to the details of the construction of the road and the mapping, they go and they displace people off their land. Some of them, they buy them forcefully, and others, they forcefully, evict them off their land. Later on, they sell that land back to themselves. They compensate themselves. And that's the same thing that they did. You've had numerous cases all through Bunyoro, from Hoima to Chotera. People have been displaced, people have lost their land unfairly by the use of the military, and all that is followed back to General Museveni's close circles. So that's a gross human rights abuse. Never mind that we still have rampant abductions, state-inspired disappearances. As we speak now, last night, 2 people were abducted. 2, just last night. So on a daily we get constant reports. There's a brother called Gaza and another young man nicknamed Abitex. They were taken by the military. There's rape by the military here in Uganda. All that goes as if it's normal. So we've been calling upon the international community to make the respect for human rights and respect for the rule of law a precondition for collaboration with Uganda. We are part of the international community, but we cannot be, subjugated by our own wealth. I co-authored a book with Dr. Greg Mills called Expensive Poverty. We, the people of Uganda, are poor, and our poverty is so expensive because it is our wealth that is actually making us poor. It is our oil that is causing us the loss of our land. It is our gold that is causing us, displacement, etc., etc. So we cannot continue being the own sponsors of our poverty. Our massive natural resources cannot continue being a curse to us. So we've been calling upon the international community to, to rein in when they deal with a dictator here in Uganda as if they're dealing with a legitimate government. It's wrong. It is the European Union Parliament that passed a resolution condemning the manner in which the 2021 elections were, conducted, effectively nullifying them. So we were calling upon them, telling them, okay, if you know that this guy is not a legitimate president, if you know it's not a legitimate government, and not only that, they continue to abuse rights, are you part of the problem? Do you know what trouble Ugandans would be in if General Museveni got that oil money? All these countries, especially in the Middle East, these countries that have descended into presidential monarchs, it is the natural resources, it is the oil that gets into their hands. Countries like Iraq, it was not a presidential monarch. Countries like Syria, countries like Brunei, it is that wealth. Uganda can very easily become, a nuclear state because of that wealth. And you know what Museveni would do. Right now, he's trying to put his son as his heir before he puts his grandson. We don't want to descend into a presidential monarch.
All right.
So conditions have to be put before our wealth is extracted.
Let me dive a little bit deeper. Why did the National Unity Platform choose to go to the European Union instead of maybe appealing to the African Union?
I'll tell you this. First of all, you should ask why would we even go outside Uganda when we have courts here in Uganda? But Owinyidoro, you saw how the judiciary here behaved on the presidential election petition that we brought. They clearly showed that they are in the pockets of General Museveni. The East African community and the African Union has largely become a club of presidents looking out for each other and putting diplomacy ahead of justice and ahead of everything. But most importantly, we know that Museveni has largely been a puppet of the West. You see, the Baganda say, Nkumanyi Muze, Yago Girako. Now Museveni calls us puppet of the West, but he has been the puppet of the West, just endorsing everything that comes. We know where Museveni's money comes from. We know where Museveni's energy comes from, and that is where exactly we go. So we went to the EU and told them, you people have historically been empowering dictators. Amin would have fallen long time if the international community got their hands off him. Gaddafi, Mugabe, etc., all dictators would have fallen long enough before, if the international community got their hands off them. So we went to them and told them, we know that if you stop sponsoring our operation back home, at least that will be the first step to our liberation. And they listened to us, at least so far.
But then again, the repercussion of that from other people's views is that we are reintroducing colonialism at the end of the day, which then kills the independence that we're continuously following through.
By telling the foreigners not to sponsor our operation, that is colonialism. By telling them stop sponsoring a dictator here, I don't think it is. I'll tell you that all these dictators always pull out that Pan-African card. I saw Tayebwa with his sheep hair on the head, that colonial wig that they put. They don't even know what it means. They keep sweating, but they want to look white. And they call out on colonialism. What do you call colonialism? I think colonialism is subjecting your people to a foreign power. You see, we almost no longer have an airport. Our country is being mortgaged to the whites. Today, if you have a child, that child owes the foreigners 1.8 million. Every Ugandan, even one that was born today, you owe foreigners 1.8 million. I don't know how much it's going to be next year. All that money is being borrowed by Museveni and his team, robbing it, but it is us that have to pay it. Okay. So they are literally selling us back to colonialism. They are talking about colonialism. They are selling our children to slavery. Today, slave trade is happening today, and those people in power are the ones owning those companies that sell our daughters there. Every day they repatriate an average of 3 dead bodies killed in the Middle East. and they talk about colonialism. They have the guts to talk about colonialism. They have reintroduced slavery today. They run companies that sell organs. They sell your kidney while you're still alive, and they call out colonialism. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Okay. All right. You talked about natural resources. The reality of the matter.
Let me also, I'm sorry to interject, but I'll tell you this without any doubt, that actually we are now being recolonized by people in a black skin. Okay? Museveni himself is a colonialist. He's a colonialist. He's, at least according to President Obote, Museveni is not a Ugandan. His father was not born in Uganda. Museveni was not born in Uganda. His son was not born in Uganda. And his grandchildren are not born in Uganda. Colonialism is a state where a foreigner is ruling over you. And Museveni is a colonialist of this modern day. So, who is talking about colonialism? I'm a Ugandan. I'm an indigenous Ugandan. Talking about Uganda and fighting for what is rightfully ours. We don't want our natural wealth to go into the hands of a foreigner, that is Museveni. No wonder he does not care about our healthcare system. No wonder he does not care about our education. No wonder he does not care about the future of Uganda. Because he's not a Ugandan anyway. He's a colonialist in 2022.
All right. You have talked about the natural wealth that we have. The reality of the matter is that we have oil.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a resource that can enable us as Uganda to break free from the chains of colonialism. How then do we revert and arrest this natural resource to then defend us and give us the liberty to be as independent and then bring the wealth back to us so that we can thrive as a nation?
Thank you. We, the Christians, are told that God will test you with a little to see how you will behave when they give you the bigger chunk. Look at what is happening with our gold. You know, it is closed out by one family. If it's not Museveni, it's his son. If it's not his son, it's his brother Sodo. They own the gold mines in the country. You know, that's exactly what's happening to oil. And he has been honest. The guy has told you that it is my oil, it is his oil. How can we make sure that we maximize the natural resources of Uganda to benefit Ugandans? By ensuring that these resources are, run by institutions, not an individual, but institutions. There's no institutionalism here in Uganda. It's an individual that's ruling over us. That is why you were seeing in the Kosase probe, the people that run the Uganda Airlines are telling you that they get instructions from Salim Saleh, Museveni's brother. So everything is owned by one family, okay? The only way we can benefit from our natural resources is to ensure that these natural resources are actually benefiting the people of Uganda. Do you know the details of the oils agreements that are made?
So if you were president, how would you make that happen? When you are president, how will you make that happen?
I would make sure all these are run by institutions. I'll make sure there's clarity, there's transparency. It's not one person or one family that runs the wealth of the nation. I gave you an example of gold. What these people are doing with the gold from Karamoja is exactly what they intend to do with the oil from Bunyuru. That is how they are dealing with the land. Look at them, they are owning land in miles, in a region where they are not born. Where did they go get those miles of land? Okay? Now the same way they've been running the oil is the same way they are intending, they've been running the gold, it's the same way they're intending to run the oil. And we're saying, stop. Togasima. Let us first align it. We are still a young population. Museveni is dying out soon. That oil is going to benefit Uganda and not benefit Museveni. And we were advised by Dr. Besigye more than 3 years ago that if that oil falls in the hands of Museveni, we are finished. And we said, okay, we can't stop him in Uganda, but at least we know the source. So we stop him from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's come back to Africa. The East African region is preparing for the Legislative Assembly elections.
Yeah.
We do see that in the papers and in the talking points for the last few weeks. Now, of course, the ruling party has taken dominancy and is even caused influence to the opposition representative seats that are available. But from day one, National Unity Platform chose not to actually participate in this nomination process.
Yeah.
Why did you come to that decision?
We decided not to just legitimize a process that will bear no fruit. I'll tell you that the East African Legislative Assembly was established to collect opinions. You understand? There's a reason why there is expected to be a number representing the ruling party, a number and other members representing different shades. Unfortunately, like under every dictatorship, I mean, it's the common dictator's playbook. They make sure they co-opt. The same way they co-opted the UPC, now they've co-opted the DP, and sadly, they are co-opting JEMA too. To make sure that for every opinion that goes there is an opinion defending and legitimizing General Museveni's rule. It is clear that we are living under subjugation. It's very unfortunate that some politicians actually don't care about the plight of people. They only care about their stomachs. It's very, very unfortunate. Otherwise, in a situation where people are being abducted, okay? People are being abducted and killed. I don't know if that's what UPC stands for. I don't know if that's what DP or JEMA stands for. Museveni is trying to lock out any voice that can bring reality from Uganda. That is why NUP is the biggest party relegated to the opposition. We don't believe we are the opposition, but that's where we're relegated to, and we have to, you know, run our show from there as well. However, we are locked out, everybody that is going there, because NRM has the biggest numbers, and their MPs don't necessarily think. Like Museveni said, he's not looking for MPs that think. For as long as they can vote according to his instruction, they'll go like that. So it's very, very unfortunate, but that's the reality, that we are taking only yes men. They have to meet Museveni, gives them orders, and they go on. They misrepresent us. However, I am confident that even without the East African Legislation Assembly, at least we have the various platforms to air our views, to also discredit it. We also, through our legal lines in the party, are intending to challenge that process in court, because it is not representative of the views of the people of Uganda, and it should be challenged.
Okay, all right. How else then does the National Unity Platform intend to engage in the East African integration?
Well, we are engaging in various ways. Like I said, the East African community is a very noble idea. It's an idea that was started by our forefathers. But every idea that is good, still under dictatorship, is vulgarized to the benefit of the dictatorship. That does not mean it's the end of the journey. I mean, look at the East African community. We say we have federated. We have no common currency. We have no common values. Okay? Because in Kenya here, it is our sister country, but they just had elections recently. No abductions, no political prisoners, no internet shutdown, no police round or military rounding of opposition residences, etc., etc. In Uganda, it's different. In Tanzania, Kenya, and various other countries, they've had various peaceful transfers of power from one leader to another. In Uganda today, it's coming to 40 years, no peaceful transfer of power. So, I am convinced that the East African community has been reduced to a club of presidents. However, we also know that East Africa is not only about the leaders, it's about the populations. We can engage with the Kenyans, with the Ugandans, with the Tanzanians, and with other East Africans. In any case, when I was abducted in 2018 and nobody knew where I was, it's not the government of Kenya that stood up or the government of Tanzania. It was the people of Kenya that stood up and put pressure, and that was released. So the people are stronger than those that rule over them. Our relationships are much bigger and go far beyond the politicians that rule over us. So we are engaging on a different style, Robert style, you know.
Okay, Robert style. Okay, all right. Let's talk about the images starting to put out there. For example, iPod boycotted. Now you do have the Legislative Assembly elections.
Yeah.
Now what does? Where's the future of the National Unity Platform? Because
and by the way,
yes.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
To see a free Uganda.
Thank you.
And may you live to interview me when I'm real president.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure being here in Magere. And again, we came here to hear the opinion of others who have had a different exposure of what we are all desiring, a better Uganda. You've heard from the horse's mouth, National Unity Platform President Robert Kyagulanyi, giving you his 2 cents on all the matters that have been the biggest stories in the last 7 days. Well, I hope that those have helped you make better sense of what's happening around you, around your country. Until we meet tomorrow again, 6:30, thank you so much for watching.